We wake up every day alarmed, not only by our alarm clocks, but also because we know that a new day also means another day for women to be victimized, another day for sorrow for some other families, where poor minor girl children, poor women, people living with albinism, LGBTI communities are raped and killed. It is now time where men and women of this country need to join hands and fight this pandemic. In Psalm 121, verse 1, it reads thus, I quote, I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Indeed, he who watches over Israel, or he who watches over us, will never slumber nor sleep. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. O Lord, hear our plea, listen to our prayers, and heal our land. Honorable Chief Whip, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Zinoli, Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Lucas, the Chairperson of the Select Committee and Petition on Executive Undertakings, Honorable Nita, Honorable Members, Mr. Gugundima, author of All in God's Life, Dr. Gitumezi Disimelo, clinical psychologist, life coach, and author of a book titled Trapped in Love, Mr. Bafana Kumalo, the co-founder of Sonke Gender Justice, all delegates or all participants, good afternoon. It is the 27th of November 2020, where we are going to start with our program now. The 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. And the theme for today is act and don't look away. We are starting with our program, believing that we have our programs. The first speaker, before I call the speaker, let me call each and every one of us to join hands in moment of silence for prayer and meditation. Thank you very much. Good afternoon again. I'm now going to call the first speaker, who is going to give us a welcome address. And the speaker is the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable S.E. Lucas. Me Lucas Nkari Iwangwina.
Thank you very much. Goedemiddag, achtbare voorzitter. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, the Chief Whip of the National Council of Provinces, members of Parliament, NA and NCOP, our chairperson of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus, also doubling as the chairperson of the event. Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guests, those that are willing to sacrifice their Friday afternoon for this very important case. Ladies and gentlemen, the 16 days of activism for No Violence Against Women and Children was initiated in 1991 by the first Women's Global Leadership Institute, held the Center for Women. Knowledge and innovations in efforts to eliminate all forms of violence against women. We also joined this campaign and we launched the first. Yes.
You are correctly, we can't hear you.
Is it?
I think there's a problem of network there.
Is it what they are saying?
Yes.
Is it? But let me try. Now of late, you know, we are ladylike. We don't want to speak too loud because we are being zoomed. So this campaign doesn't only seek, like I said, let me start where of violence and Honorable Rita, it's really, I'm sorry if it is that some of you are not, it's not so clear, but let me try. As we commemorate this day, we must bear in mind that South Africa continues to have one of the highest murder rates in the world, the 5th highest according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Within that context, we also have a femicide rate that is 5 to 6 times higher than the world average, depending on the sexual violence and we count and we remember was 15 years old when she went missing in 2010. 2020 marks 34 years since South Africa adopted the very same campaign. As a sphere seized with the responsibility of oversight and accountability, this milestone necessitates that we continuously review the strategies that we have not done so well and address the specific weaknesses. We must reject excuses to our collective failures and face up to the reasons for failed policies, failed implementation, and failed accountability. Through the Women's Charter review processes, which we have undertaken across the country, we have received substantive response plans from previous officers, implementation also outlined specifically plans relating to prevention strategies, victim support strategies, and critically sound plans to bring women into the mainstream economy. Based on commitments made, we will continue to actively monitor the implementation of these plans, particularly at district and local municipal level, in order to ensure that plans are accordingly implemented. Distinguished delegates, the Women's Charter review process has served as a very important mechanism to identify systemic and institutional weaknesses in governance processes, particularly when it comes to women issues. Through our sustained engagement processes, we have ensured that issues of gender-based violence and femicide remain anchored in government's agenda and program of action. In 2020, we will continue. There is a problem.
Deputy Chair. Deputy Chairperson.
Yes.
Deputy Chairperson.
Yes.
Can you continue?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are now audible.
Is it
but
because
you were breaking?
No, this thing is saying my speaker is not working. That's why I'm asking, am I audible?
No, for now you are audible.
Through our sustained engagement processes, we have ensured that issues of gender-based violence and femicide remain anchored in government's agenda and program of action. In 2020, we will continue to engage the three spheres of government, not only to monitor how well government is implementing response plans committed to, but further to measure the impact of implemented programs. We further seek to improve coordination and synergy across the three spheres in order to ensure that there is a concerted movement to eradicate all forms of violence against women and children. At the center of its outlook. Our society needs a democratic culture that is dynamic and always ready to insulate itself from social degeneration. Women and child abuse is a form of social degeneration which we should fight consistently to get rid of. I want to announce here today that the Takuwani Riime men's sector, can my video be opened by the host, because they said the host have stopped it. I want to announce here today that the Takuwani Riime men's sector has made a commitment to be actively involved in prevention programs, particularly at the identified GBV hotspots during the festive season. The men's movement is currently playing an important role in ensuring that men actively participate in the changing mindset and the behavior of men in our communities. I want to further call on faith-based organizations, community formations, and ordinary members of our society to also play an active part in the fight against gender-based violence during this holiday season. We all have a role to play, both collectively and individually, to speak out, to act against gender-based violence. Let's act and don't look away. Honorable members, allow me, before I welcome all of you properly, to welcome our speakers for today. We want to welcome Dr. Kitumisi Tisimilo, a clinical psychologist, a life coach, speaker, and author of a published memoir about overcoming emotional abuse titled Trapped in Love. Furthermore, we want to introduce Gugu Ndima, an activist, social commentator, published author of fiction called All in a Girl's Life, as well as Reverend Bafana Kumalo, the former chairperson of the Men's Forum, co-founder of Songwe Gender Justice, a man always willing to assist us to advance gender justice. With that, few words, we want to welcome all of you to this event, and we want to apologize to members, delegates, to the issues of technical problems that we are experiencing. With that, be welcome. Remember, the campaign that we are having against this scourge is not only a 16-day campaign, and I think Parliament has successfully showed us that all of us can be busy 365 days to make sure we address the issues of gender equality as well as gender-based violence and femicide. We welcome you all. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. It was too formative. The co-host, can you please assist? I don't know whether we're going to continue like this, because the line when the Deputy Chairperson was addressing us, it wasn't clear. I think we lost a lot of things on the way while she was busy giving her a speech. So please assist us, please. We are moving to take the second speaker, who is Miss Gugu Ndima, the author of All in a Girl's Life.
I
She's going to cover the socio-economic implication on gender-based violence. Ms. Gugu, the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the chairperson of the proceedings. I also wish to extend my gratitude and appreciation to Parliament, more especially for this invite, given that this is a very contentious issue in our society. But just in opening, I wish to say that year in, year out, we have this conversation. We speak specifically between this period of 16 days of activism. As I woke up, I think today or later yesterday, we heard the news of a woman who was killed with her 5 children. And this happening during this period is actually quite significant, given that the very same thing that the 16 days of activism seeks to curb within society continues. But also the contradiction of the fact that year in, year out, we are seeing an increase in murders, in deaths, and a complete disregard of all interventions that are being taken, whether by government, by communities, by stakeholders, with respect to curbing this particular pandemic, because it is a pandemic. In us being able to communicate this or to be able to tackle this, I think one of the issues that are not largely spoken about or deliberated on are the causations. What causes this to happen? And we should be frank that largely it impacts on Black women in particular. And I think that's why this particular theme, or especially speaking about socio-economic ramifications, is vital. There was a tweet earlier on that I saw, tweeted by a lady who said she had to sleep with a man in order for her to secure a job. Now, a lot of people tend to have a moralistic debate about this. The argument would largely be centered about the woman herself and the choices she makes. But no one actually tackles the system that perpetuates this patriarchy, that perpetuates the system where women find themselves oppressed, women find themselves exploited, but also that sustains this gender-based violence that we've got. You know, it's all good and well that in society we react to some of these deaths, things that are happening to women, but I think, especially knowing that Parliament is also an enactment institution, the causations also need to be looked at. And one of the biggest are the economic systems or the economic disparities that a lot of Black women find themselves in. The recent statistics that were published in relation to unemployment actually exposed that the people that bear the brunt of poverty, unemployment, exploitation are Black women largely. So how come is it that we've normalized these economic conditions in society that keep a lot of these women in bad relationships, trapped in the patriarchal system, but also in these particular domestic environments that they find themselves in, which continue to make them vulnerable to what they are? And I'll just give a simplistic example, but I think it's quite important. Society has normalized the type of working environments and working conditions Black women find themselves in. For example, we've normalized the fact that a Black woman should be a petrol attendant, she should be a domestic worker, she should be working far away. Now, when a woman comes out, for example, going to a place of employment, let's take a domestic worker, no one actually regards the fact that a woman has to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, make sure that her kids are fed, take a taxi or take a bus and go to a place that is way far off reach from the place that she lives in. There are already danger elements to that. It's very simplistic and we normally tend to overlook at that, but these are things that contribute to some of the reasons why a lot of Black women are targets. So you look at a woman 4 o'clock in the morning has to go and take a taxi, take a bus, risk her life for a mere exploitative wage or salary, sometimes not even getting it. She goes to that workplace. Let's also take another sector where a lot of Black women find themselves in, the retail sector, where even if her normal hours are up to 6 or 7 o'clock, but she has to wait another 2 hours because she needs to get transport to go home. If she doesn't get transport, she risks the possibility of either being mugged, being robbed, being killed on her way back home. Now, the worst part of it is that a lot of these women don't have help when they get home. So you find that even her children are at risk. Some can't even afford early childhood development centers or people that look after their children. So a woman finds herself vulnerable, not just herself, but also the children or the family family that she now has a responsibility to protect as a result of her socioeconomic conditions. A lot of women or a lot of houses in South Africa are female-headed households. So you find that a woman is a target by virtue of the fact that she finds herself in this environment. Take a woman who's at Diepsloot, for example, who lives alone in a shack, who lives with her kids. She becomes a primary target to culprits, to rapists, to people who want to rob and mug. It doesn't even help that just in her environment alone, there are people that are unemployed, largely Black men. There are people that are exploitative. There's drug abuse, there's substance abuse. So from what I am saying here is that we've got the issue of causation, which is largely undermined in society, whereby economic systems or economic conditions tend to sustain and oppress Black women in particular and make them vulnerable to this particular environment. So from a solutions perspective, we should be able to look at policies to see how far have we come with the empowerment of Black women over and above the fact that we see compliance. So the quotas that are being adhered to by companies, the quotas that are being adhered to by government, but beyond that, economic opportunities that allow Black women to thrive beyond the survivalist mode that they find themselves in, and at time making themselves vulnerable. Some women even live with men and even provide for these men purely because she needs to feel protected or she needs to feel safe. So you find that there's a man that sits there that abuses this woman, but she's with this particular partner, not on the basis of love or something, but it's a society conditioned need. It's the fact that she doesn't feel safe. It's the fact that she cannot go to the South African Police Service and feel that she would be heard. So these are some of the things that actually make women entrapped in these in this particular perverse environment or exploitative environment that enables this particular pandemic we've got of GBV. I, for myself, I'm a single parent. I live alone with my son. I have 2 dogs. I sleep with pepper spray next to me. I don't know how many security systems I have tried to put in, but that has not stopped people from breaking into my house. And I know for a fact that it's on the basis of the fact that I'm a woman, I live alone, and I live with a child. My neighbors, on the other hand, it's complete family institutions where there's a father, there are uncles and so forth, and they've never had the problem that I've got. So we tend to undermine some of the small things that Black women confront every single day, thinking it's something that is normalized or that normally a Black woman should go through. And the perverse and sad thing is that mostly it's justified on the fact that, no, it's because Black women are strong. Strong for Black women is associated with pain, is associated with struggle, and it is associated with this exploitation. So you earn these supposed struggle credentials on the basis of how many times you get exploited by society. And these are things that can be changed by Parliament. This narrative needs to change, that you cannot normalize exploitative employment. You cannot normalize the fact that a lot of these Black women have to go to taxi ranks, have to go to buses, and we are not even trying to accommodate them in these transport systems for that matter. What we simply do, we simply say, uNkulunkulu Khan. That's the perceptive and narrative that Black women are supposed to always be relying on prayer. But what about the system? What about government? What is capitalism's role in this particular perverse reality for a lot of Black women? And the sad thing as well is that it's not because Black women only need employment. They're not even considered in terms of opportunities. There are Black women who are self-sufficient, starting businesses, but to what extent is government helping? The pandemic was here. The Department of Small Development Business needs to answer and say how many Black women have actually benefited from these funds, particularly COVID funds that were supposed to assist them. Most of them are on survivalist mode. So until we actually stop romanticizing GBV, until we stop making it malicious compliance every time to tick boxes that we've done this on the basis of getting KPIs and bonuses, we need to start giving ourselves a reality check as government, as representatives, as citizens, to say the very people that we supposedly represent, are their voices being heard? Thank
you. Thank you very much, Ms. Gugundima.
you.
A reality check is needed. We also need to check as to what is wrong with our system. what is wrong with our male partners? Until when women and children are going to suffer? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Gugu. We are proceeding with our program. I'm now going to call upon Dr. Kitumetsi Disimelo, a clinical psychologist, a life coach, and the author of a book titled Trapped in Love, Reflection on Overcoming Emotional Abuse. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you so much. Greetings to everyone. As the Honorable Chairperson has indicated, my name is Dr. Kitumetsi Disimelo, a clinical psychologist from Pretoria. Many just call me Tumi. And I'm just going to touch on, following on what the first speaker was talking about, some of the challenges that are faced by, people who are exposed to abuse of all different types, especially emotional abuse. And firstly, abuse is about power. I think sometimes we think, there's bigger, but abuse is actually about power and control. And it's sad that, in South Africa, we are, exposed daily to the statistics that we are exposed to. So basically, an abuser wants to gain power over their targeted victim, using anything and everything to violate the rights of the victim. And abuse, sometimes we tend to think that it will not happen to people who are educated or from specific socio-economic backgrounds, but abuse can happen to any individual of any gender, age, race, education, social standing, and so forth. It's unfortunate that in our country, as we know, that the scourge is largely amongst, females. And it happens in intimate relationships, within families, within workplaces, within society in general, and even strangers can be abusive towards, people that they don't know. And issues of patriarchy, as the first speaker has touched on, a sense of entitlement, childhood trauma or early trauma in society often fuel this occurrence of abuse. Additionally, what has been termed as pull her down syndrome, whereby you get infighting within disenfranchised groups such as women, whereby women start attacking other women, and this way, this sort of interaction can actually become abusive. And my next point is just to also emphasize there's different types of abuse. You get sexual rape, as it's sometimes referred to, physical abuse, financial abuse, whereby someone prevents someone from earning or uses their earning ability or their own earnings against them to control them, to gain power over them. You also have sometimes what is referred to as spiritual abuse or religious abuse, whereby someone is forced into a cult or someone is prevented from practicing their religious or spiritual beliefs. You also get technological abuse, where someone uses technology to abuse someone. And there's many different types and variations. And the last one is also that I'll refer to is emotional, sometimes referred to as verbal, psychological, or mental abuse. And this form of abuse is not large. Some people don't know that they're actually being emotionally abused until they actually hear other people's stories or understand their own rights. So emotional abuse is basically name calling, where a person or a partner insults you, blames you for everything, extreme jealousy, intimidation, shaming, whether it's your body or just anything about you, that they're constantly in a relationship with you, but are constantly shaming you, humiliating, they isolate you, they control you and everything that you do, and stalking also falls within this realm of emotional abuse. And, sadly, abuse has devastating consequences, as we know with the statistics, and they range in severity depending on the circumstances and the personality traits of the person. So, you get this is not an inclusive list, of course, that I'm going to give the different types of consequences. It's not all the consequences, but you get psychological disorders whereby people suffer from anxiety disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, suicidal ideation. Some actually take their lives. People are hospitalized for physical and psychological consequences. You get people who are constantly emotionally distressed. They cry all the time. Issues with trust. People, after the consequences of abuse, also include that going forward, someone has trust issues, making relationship, they struggle with that. Confidence issues, anger issues, someone who's just angry with everybody all the time. Sometimes it could be a consequence of abuse, self-esteem issues. Sometimes you find someone who's from an abusive relationship ending up in another relationship that is abusive because they haven't dealt or had closure or had healing from the past relationship. So you find the cycle of abuse actually continues. And in sad cases, you get instances where the victim is actually killed. And I think we have many stories in South Africa that, show this consequence whereby victims of abuse are actually killed. Some continually feel trapped. And feeling trapped, it's for different reasons. It could be for dependency, that someone has lost their confidence so much that they do not see how they can survive without this person. And sometimes the dependency is due to financial issues. Sometimes the staying or feeling trapped in the relationship is because of fear of what society will do or what society will say about them if they left the relationship. Sometimes it's because the abuser threatens the victim's life, that they actually end up just being trapped in the relationship. And emotional abuse, typically, the person continually, even after leaving the relationship, just like in my testimony, in my story that I tell in my book, that even after leaving, I felt trapped because of the constant words this person used against me, that they were replaying in my mind. So even though I had left the relationship, I was constantly feeling trapped or feeling stuck because of the words this person said to me that were replaying in my mind, even though he was not physically there. So being trapped comes in different forms and shapes, but it happens and it's real. And it doesn't matter the number of incidences. One incident of abuse can have devastating consequences all the time. And the length of time of the abuse is also not necessarily relevant. A consequence is always devastating. Even one single episode can lead to someone truly not being okay. And the affected or the victim or the survivor needs help and should be prioritized all the time. And of course, the longer the abuse, the likelihood is that the consequences are even more devastating and the intervention will be on a long-term basis. And in South Africa, sadly, and I think the first speaker touched on this, the systems are not in place to assist people who are victims of abuse. The families protect the abuser sometimes. The families protect this person because the person is the breadwinner. The police are not trained or they do not know how to offer support for these victims. And there's also a lack of places of safety. For example, where do these people run to with their abuse? Where does someone go who doesn't have resources? Where do they end up? They end up staying in the relationship for fear of their lives. So we need to really start looking at the systems that are in place to assist victims, everyone affected from abuse. The abuser always is wrong. I think sometimes the victims or the affected sometimes struggle with that. You actually start believing that maybe you are wrong or you caused this person to abuse you or to do what they're doing to you. And it's important to always emphasize when we have these conversations that whatever abuse that happens, that the abuser is always wrong, in spite of whatever reasoning that they give. And the abuser are likely projecting their own demons, their own challenges onto the victim, but it's not an excuse for them to be abusive, and it's not the responsibility of the victim to help the abuser face their demons. So you find a lot of stories with the abuser that, they've got their own childhood traumas, or some of them are just horrible people. But it's not the victim's place to fix this person who is abusing them. And the victim probably, like I did in my story, has existing challenges. And what the abuser would do is, for example, if you've got insecurity issues, the abuser would take and target and use that insecurity that he or she sees that exists, and use it and increase it to an extent that you actually just feel powerless and you are rendered helpless, and you really embrace and become that insecure person. That challenge really overpowers you when you are a victim of abuse. And the aim of the abuser is to disarm, isolate, and harm the victim, taking away their rights. And let me share a little bit about my journey. I have a published memoir titled Trapped in Love that I am personally selling. And it's a journey of overcoming emotional abuse and the lessons I learned from my experience of emotional abuse. And in summary, just to paint the picture of my story, the abuse was in 2003. Okay, when I was registered for my first master's degree to qualify as a clinical psychologist. So basically, I finished school at 16. 4 years after that, I had an honors, and I was turning 21 when I was doing my first year of my first master's to become a clinical psychologist. And I was studying, and I met this person that I called Joe at that time. Joe was about 10 years or 8 years older than me, so a little bit older than me. And after he met me, we started this relationship, and after 3 months, we were engaged. So the relationship was quick, and we were engaged after about 3 months. And I must say, in reflection, the monster that existed in Joe was already there. So there were evidence of him being excessively jealous, subtle evidence of this character that he later then came out to become very abusive. So from the beginning, there were traces of an abusive character. And when he moved to another province to further his studies, to specialize in psychiatry, that is when the monster within Joe actually became alive. So he would then diagnose me. Remember, I'm a psychologist and he's a psychiatrist to be. He would diagnose me with clinical disorders. So he would diagnose me with a bipolar personality disorder, and he would diagnose me with all sorts of things in an attempt just to break me. He would use things I told him. So I would tell him some of my challenges, and he would take those challenges and, create them into being a diagnosis. And you must remember, Joe is a quiet, reserved person who goes to church, who speaks in tongues. So in society, Joe is actually respected. And here I come, and he is so angry. And cognitively, I knew that I did not have the diagnosis. I mean, I was studying psychology, right? So I had the diagnosis, the book that we used to diagnose. I knew I didn't meet the criteria of any of the diagnoses that he diagnosed me with. But I actually started to believe him and internalize this. And so when he became this monster all the time now, he would give me double bound messages, which is typical of people who are abusive. So they will tell you, I love you. And the next minute, I hate you. You're a horrible person. And the next minute, they give this confusing messages that do not make sense. So he would tell me I've got a personality disorder. And the next moment, he's forcing that his parents come to do the lobola negotiations. So the messages was, back and front. And because we're in a different province, we would speak on the phone a lot, but he would be happy, hang up, and the next moment call me back, and he's calling me and diagnose me and swearing at me and calling me all sorts of names and telling me to not hang out with people. So basically isolating me. And I knew deep down that there is nothing wrong with being diagnosed with, any diagnosis, because you can seek help. But when he diagnosed me, it cut deep. I believed him. I I internalized everything he said and actually believed it and start to live as if I'm a person who is unwell. And I began to question my values, because he would, I had tattoos, for example, and he would tell me, how dare you get tattoos? People with bipolar personality disorder get tattoos, and people who dress the way you dress are not okay in the head. They've got A, B, and C. And I actually started to question my sanity. I was so confused, the whole time. And he stripped me of the little confidence I had and really rendered me helpless. And this is very typical, the double bound messages and isolation and making someone feel as if they are lost and alone and isolating them. That's typical of the character of people who are abusive. And, I kept on postponing the negotiations, because remember, we were engaged. I kept on postponing, and that triggered him more. So he would say, we must get married immediately, and, start a family but immediate, with the same breath, he would then tell me, but you are such a useless person. You will amount to nothing. You are worthless. He said all these things, and he would criticize my journey as a clinical psychologist to tell me that I'm a useless psychologist. I will amount to nothing. And finally, after months of this, so the relationship overall was little over a year. So we got engaged, and then this emotional torture was there for a few months. And after what I deem was this emotional torture that I suffered through daily, I decided to leave the relationship. And because the incongruency I got from him was just not worth it. So there was a little bit of fight left in me that made a decision that I need to leave, because I'm exhausted. I can't live like this forever. And he would say that no one will love me, and no one would want me. He's just tolerating me. He's doing me a favor by marrying me. And some of my behaviors are not what a wife must behave like. And his wife mustn't behave that way. And I finally asked him, okay, then please go give this ring to your wife. And I left. And I left knowing that I can never please him. I knew right then when I decided to leave that he was not okay. And he tried to get me to stay by making me, by saying to me, what will people say? Because we are from the same neighborhood. What will people say? People are going to be asking questions. He wanted me to feel bad and to remain in the relationship. But I said, I don't care anymore. And I decided to leave, because I knew that this guy is not the one I want to spend forever with. But the challenge is, even though cognitively I knew I didn't want to spend my life with this guy, his words I internalized. So when I left that day, I actually forgave him, and I said I left him. I had internalized a negative view of self. I hated myself. So everything he had said about me, I actually had internalized and believed, and I hated myself. And even when he stalked me, I just, he continued to do so after I left. I changed my number. I did not want him, and I was not interested, and I was not angry with him. I just concluded he's unwell. But my challenge was I hated my skin. So from that day, I started to actually pray that I am taken in my sleep. I used to meditate on my death. I used to ask for, our Creator to take me from this earth, because I am tired. I don't want to live anymore. And, it happened that from when I left the relationship around early 2005, that I lived like that, constantly praying to be taken away from this earth. And I suppressed it. I avoided going there. So sometimes in that period when I left, the depressed feelings would come up. And what I would do, I would just go see someone, get some medication, but I would never actually sit down with myself and be open to the healing. I was never open to healing. So I would just, give the psychologist and psychiatrist 40% of my issue and not really go deep into why I hate myself so much. I collected money. I went to get the tattoos removed, because his voice was in my mind that people like me with tattoos have bipolar personality disorder. So I went to do all these things, even though I knew he was unwell, but his voice was constantly in my mind. His voice was tormenting me, and it tormented me, people, for about a decade. So it tormented me daily in my existence for about 10 years. And I was so angry with myself. I didn't understand. I'm wired like a perfectionist. I didn't understand how I allowed this man to hurt me, the way that he did. I couldn't forgive myself. And I struggled with that for 10 years. And in that 10 years, obviously, because I was hurting, I always say to people that when you are hurting, no one can love you out of the hurt. I had to sit with the hurt and the pain and make the decision that I needed to heal. New relationships in that period never worked because I was not okay. I was not able to form proper relationship because I was hurting. So even though you are avoiding certain pains or things that have happened, even though you are avoiding, going there, even though you are avoiding everything that's happening, it doesn't make it go away. So for 10 years, I struggled with his voice. And that's when, after I left, I decided to jot down and write down the incident that happened, the reality, my story. I wrote it down. But in the 10 years, I struggled to publish it. And I believe it's because I always believed I was writing a book to motivate people. But I felt my book did not have an ending. And rightly so. I think it's because I was not healed. And I wrote just about my pain, but the book did not have an ending. Like, I wanted to motivate people with my story, but I couldn't motivate people because there was no happy ending, basically. So in 2013, fast forward a decade later, after all the struggles, when I turned 31, remember this relationship was when I was 21, but when I turned 31, on my birthday, actually, in February, I actually had a prayer and I said, you know what? I'm sure there's a purpose why I'm on the earth. At the moment, I don't know it, but I'm sure there is. And I pray that, I get help. And I started to now see that I needed help and embraced it and realized that I hated my skin. I hated being alive. I hated breathing in my skin. And I decided in 2013, a decade later, that I needed help. And believe you me, I then went in 100%, and I was, 100% assisted. And within a few months, honestly speaking, I can say that I reached a point where I was okay. And for the first time after that, leaving that marriage, that engagement, I then was okay and I was free. My mind was free. I was not affected by this person's words in my mind. And I was not impacted at all, only in 2013. And that's when I actually then started to embark on writing a conclusion, because I wanted to really, to really go out there and encourage people. So not just to tell my story about how I was emotionally abused, but how did I actually come out of it and how I actually got the healing. And what motivated me to also write the book was that in my life and in my practice, I realized that emotional abuse, there are common threads within the experience of abuse. So victims who will be survivors are struggling with similar things. And the one thing I wanted to show and emphasize was how you can feel trapped in a relationship, even though you could leave. How you could feel trapped if you are emotionally abused, because of the thoughts in your mind. So I wanted to emphasize how to some people, how to explain some of the experiences that you have, to show you, to make you understand that it's not just you. You are not crazy. This thing has happened to other people as well. And how you can overcome it is by going through this A, B, and C and doing this and this. And so the book fortunately got published in 2019, and it's basically aimed to encourage victims of abuse who will become survivors by normalizing some of the experiences and offer hope that one can survive fully, provided they sit with the pain until it transcends. And the key thing is that you need to sit with the pain. There is no miracle. Even I, as a clinical psychologist, there was no miracle for me. I had to get down and be vulnerable and admit that I'm not okay. And after doing that, it got better. And I'm trying to instill that hope that you can survive and actually be okay, provided you sit with the pain. And it also aims to emphasize that a new relationship. So after you leave whatever it is, a relationship that was abusive, after you leave, a new relationship is not necessarily the solution. You need to, the first step is leaving the abusive scenario, but you actually need to choose to heal. And a new relationship is not necessarily going to sort you out. A new, no one can love you out of the pain. No one can force you out of the pain. You avoiding it is not going to make it miraculously go away. And you need to actually sit with it and admit until it transcends. And I'm hoping that the book also shows that you can actually overcome. You can actually sit and, survive and be okay. And it also shows that no one is immune to abuse. Me, for example, as a clinical psychologist, I was not immune to it. I was emotionally abused, psychologically abused, of all the types of abuse. And also that leaving, I'm hoping it also emphasizes that leaving is like the first part of your survival journey. You actually need to choose to heal. And it's your choice by the victim. And it is difficult, but it is possible. And it is also, the book is also aimed to emphasize to the supporters of the victims of abuse to facilitate better understanding of the challenges that the victims face. Because sometimes people ask, but why did you stay so long? Why did you not leave? What are you struggling with? I'm also hoping that it shows that when you are not okay, when you are being abused, this person takes away the core. This person takes your issues and uses those issues to get you to feel as if you are immobilized. They get you to feel like you are not worthy. They get you to feel like you are useless. They get you to feel like you are nothing, that you have no purpose, to a point where you actually might want to die. And it's not a small thing. It's a devastating consequence. So the supporters of people who are going through abuse, also, I'm hoping it shows you that it's not easy to just snap out of it, because the abuser used things that are personal to this person. The abuser attacked this person at the core of this person, and it's not easy. And I'm hoping that it brings to the attention of the abusers the pain that they are causing and the need for them to seek their own individual help for the underlying issues that are causing this behavior. And I want to also emphasize that the victims always, it's not their responsibility to fix the abuser. The victims are the priority in this situation so that they can be survivors. And once you leave, you need to start healing. You need to start the journey. And the victims or the person who's surviving this must choose that journey. Just like for me, there was no automatic healing, or I couldn't read my psychology books and I was okay. I wasn't. And it is possible to survive, though. It is possible to start again. It is possible to get help and be okay, but it needs to be the victim's choice. It needs to be the victims or the survivors of this. For them to survive, need to be empowered so that they can survive. And really, it is possible. But really, I'm hoping that in time, our systems need to really show up for the people who are victimized, because not everybody has a second chance. Some people's lives are taken away. Some people do not have the resources to go and seek help. There are no shelters available. The system, the society, the economical system is also perpetuating this problem. The patriarchy in our society, the puller down syndrome, there's so many factors at play that I think we really need to step up and assist so that we can fight the scourge of abuse. Any form of abuse is not okay. And for the victims out there, I'm really hoping that they start seeking help, that there is help. There's private organizations, there's public organizations, but for our government and the system, the people behind the policies, can we please prioritize the places of safety and where we can get people help when they are being targeted. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Tumi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, what a lesson. I believe, Dr. Tumi, that one way or the other, a woman is trapped in love. And I so wish that all the survivors or the victims can find this opportunity to hear about this message. You empowered us today. And thank you very much. May God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and the platform to speak.
We are proceeding. I'm going to call upon the speaker who is going to talk about the community-based approaches in order to challenge and change social norms and attitudes that cause and perpetuate gender-based violence, the role for boys and men in fighting gender-based violence. And the person or the speaker is Mr. Bafana Kumalo, the co-founder of Sonke Gender Justice. Over to you, Daddy.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Honorable Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable members. Thank you. I'm wondering if it's possible to use to do a presentation. Can I share screen?
Yes, you can share it. You
okay.
can.
Thank you very much. I think Ms. Ndima started us off with a reminder of the sordid affair of what happened in the Eastern Cape, where a man slaughtered 5 of his children and his partner. It's indeed a pointer to the challenge that we are facing in this country. What drives a man to commit such an act against defenseless children and his partner is beyond me. I am at least relieved. I just learned from my colleague in the Eastern Cape that the perpetrator has been arrested because he was on the run. I wanted to perhaps begin by giving the context to the situation that is confronting us in this country. We are facing a situation of high levels of violence against women and children, which is a huge blot on our young democratic process. We all know that the issue of rape and sexual violence is very aggressive in South Africa, including rape of infants, in many instances by stepfathers or uncles or fathers. And there's a link, of course, between gender-based violence, HIV, and abuse of alcohol. And alcohol always contributes to some of these dysfunctions that we see in our society. Perhaps the question that people often ask is, why must we work with men? There are people who simply want to write men off. Men are perpetrators. I want to argue differently today that we can never address the challenges that have been mapped out by 2 of the eloquent speakers who spoke before me without engaging men. Because unfortunately, the common thread in the stories that they have shared with us is the role that men play in this, and what I describe as toxic masculinities that are embedded on patriarchy, a system that unfortunately I think we still do not take seriously in South Africa, but it's a cause of many of the challenges that we are facing in relation to violence against women and violence against children. People ask the question, what are the appropriate objectives and principles for gender work with men? And this is an important question because indeed, as previous speakers have pointed out, as men, we are born with privileges. We are socialized to believe that we are the most important beings in the world. We are told that women are there at our beck and call, so that whatever it is that we want, women must simply provide. And therefore, it's important that when we engage men in this discourse, there must be very clear principles that guide that engagement, so that as men, we don't come into the space where women have been struggling for many years to change the course of their history with regards to how they are treated by men in this country, and men come into that space and take over. And there's a risk that that may not actually help transform gender relations, but can actually make things even worse. And the third question that people often ask is there evidence that such interventions make a change? And I want to argue that there is, and encourage that we should, in fact, be engaging more men and boys in South Africa to change the tide against gender-based violence. And I will conclude by showing why I think we must take this work to scale in order for us to address these challenges that are confronting us. Sorry, my system now is frozen for some reason. I don't know if there's somebody who's helping. Oh yeah, it's begun to move. Okay. Now the rationale for working with men is that we want to argue that gender roles and relations currently damage women's lives and restrict women's access, because in a patriarchal system, women are not given any opportunity to express themselves, to develop themselves, and become what they can be in terms of the gifts that they have. Gender roles and social construction of masculinity, which I describe as toxic, damages men's lives just as it damages women's lives, because it impacts on how women's health is conducted. It's not surprising sometimes to hear women saying men are refusing for them to go to the clinic to simply receive health care. They want to control even their access to health services. We know the level of violence that is meted out by men in South Africa, not just against women and children, but also against other men. It's a weekend today and we are going towards the festive season. We're going to see a high rise of road accidents. And at the center of many of these is men who simply take risks all the time. Issues of alcohol and issues of femicides and suicides, where men cannot cope with their own challenges and therefore take out their anger on those that are close to them, those that they seem to see as vulnerable. The current dominant norms of masculinities are enforced by an element of homophobia, which contributes to prohibition against homosexuality and frequently violates the rights of the LGBT community. The rationale, again, is that we need to recognize men's investment in change, because I believe that there are many men who do want to change. The deputy chairperson hosted us last week in a men's parliament, and I think she can attest that many of the men who gave testimonies in that parliamentary session were in showing their commitment to invest in change so that they can behave better and that they can contribute to also mentoring younger boys so that we can deal with the many challenges that we see in our society. The challenge is, how do we support that initiative of those men who do want to see change in society? And we need to therefore take into account that these growing numbers of men who are embracing change need to be supported so that we sustain this need for change. I have indicated that as we do this, it needs to be based on firm principles. And some of these principles that we believe in at Sonke Gender Justice is that as we enter into this space and this discourse, we need as men to believe in the women's rights focus. In other words, we need to move away from the narrative that is very problematic sometimes in our country, where men begin to complain against gender equality, where men begin to complain that opportunities are being made open for women and therefore it is affecting them as men. I think there's no way you can address a situation of redress without shifting the power balances. In South Africa, where, as we all know, apartheid has kept Black people out of any political system, out of the economy, and there's no way you can transform that without ensuring that Black people also come into political space, occupy positions of authority, and also in the economic settings. Politically, we've moved in the 26 years. We have seen lots of shift of power to embrace all the diversity of our country. But I want to suggest that there's still a lot that we need to do economically and also in terms of transformation with regards to gender equality. We need to ensure that the policies and programs are sensitive to the diversity of men. Men are not the same. Men are diverse. There are men who have sex with other men. There are men who are trans. There are men who are gay. And therefore, when we talk about men, we need to also be aware that we are not talking about one homogeneous group, which is heterosexual, because that is also part of the problem. When we see the world in binaries of just men and women, we need to accept that we live in a world where there's diversity in terms of sexual orientation. We also need to acknowledge and support the men who are willing to do good, the men who look after their children, the men who are respectful to their partners, the men who support the notion of gender equality. We need to embrace those that are willing to become part of the values that are enhanced and contained in our Constitution. And this requires of necessity, therefore, that we need to address the social and structural determinants that impact on our health and the health of many in our communities. Now, there are some who believe that men cannot change. For those of you who will remember the AIDS conference in Mexico in 2006, a Canadian journalist actually said something that caught the headlines globally. And she was quoted as saying, African men will probably never change. It was such a very sad statement for me as an African man to hear a white woman from the North stating that African men must just be ruled out. We will never change. And I want to argue that Ms. Wente was wrong, because men change and change all the time. What we need to do is to ensure that we enhance our programs to make sure that men do change from the kind of behaviors that are not useful to them and are not useful to those that they live with. And I argue that men can and men do change all the time. The question is not whether can men change, but rather can policies and programs accelerate and influence positive change. In Sonke, we do work, for instance, with men, where we encourage men to support their partners through pregnancy in their antenatal care. And so we tell these men, go with your partner to the clinic so that when they tell your partner what is going to be happening to her, what is going to happen when the child arrives, you also can learn and understand so that you can be in a position to support your partner. And guess what? They go to these clinics and the nurses tell the men, no, this is not the place for men. Go and sit under the tree. We just want to talk to your partner. Now, what are we saying in our systems when we do not allow men to play this important role of parenting, of bonding with their child, even through the process of pregnancy? We are saying to these men, looking after children is not your responsibility. And then we wonder why so many men are absent in the lives of their children. And we have children that do not have any relationship with their fathers. In some instances where the fathers are present, they are only seen as ATMs, because children will only come to their father if they want money or they're looking for something, but not to really talk about their lives and the challenges that they're facing in their lives. And I think it's important that we must encourage men to play that role of being fathers who are present, who are engaging and investing emotionally in the lives of their children, because we know that when the men do that, it impacts on how the men relate to their partners and how they relate to their children. There's a lot of opportunities, existing opportunities and challenges in the work with men and boys on these issues. The evidence is growing, which shows that there are a number of organizations that are now working with men and boys, seeking to try and create a positive, what I call positive masculinities. Many of these programs, unfortunately, they are short-term. It's just workshops, which are focused without sufficient focus on moving from reflection to action. Because it's one thing to have a workshop. I think what is important to me is that we must transform from workshop to action so that we can see what we are doing in theory becoming practical in the lives of our communities. There's insufficient use of policy and community mobilization and rights literacy so that we take this work to scale. As I've indicated, there are more organizations that are coming on board, but there's very little support to ensure that this work is scaled up throughout the country. Some of the strategies that we use that I will not go through one by one, but it involves these community actions, it involves murals, it involves public demonstrations, it involves advocacy on policies. We also develop digital stories on positive stories of men that are playing a positive life in their families. At SOGA, we've developed a campaign called One Man Campaign. We've developed several tools that focuses on various sectors of society on how we can begin to develop these new men in South Africa, men of gender equality who are not afraid of gender equality, who are supportive to their partners. And through this, we ensure that these men and boys take action to end domestic and sexual violence, and that they promote healthy and equitable relationships so that they and the women in their lives can enjoy very equitable relations that are attributable to a democratic society. Through this, we also promote the idea that each one of us as men, we must teach each other, we must hold each other accountable. When I see my friend doing something that is not right, being abusive to their partner, I must be able to call them to order and say, this is not acceptable. You should not be doing something like this. We need to encourage that men must work together collaboratively in ensuring that they collaborate with the women's sector as allies in building this new movement that is focused on demand for justice so that we can all claim our rights as are enshrined in our constitution. And in this, we develop some fact sheets where we do work with men generally, but also we look at how we can influence teachers, how we can influence coaches of sports so that they also can share the same message where the boys are exposed to these men of influence in society. We've developed a CD of Iskatamia where we sing positive messages about what it means to be a man and how men should be treating women with dignity. We do what we call engagements in positive fatherhood. And this picture we took of one of the colleagues in Soweto who was at the Jabulani park. You can see this man may not have a job, he probably is not working, but he took a wheelbarrow, something that he can afford because he could not afford a pram. And he put his daughters on this wheelbarrow, taking them to the park for a picnic. And there you can see there's a plastic there because he can't even afford to have a decent Tupperware, but he's putting a lunch for him to can sit and eat and play with his children. And if you look at the faces of these children very closely, they are all so excited because they're going to be spending time with their father. To them, it does not matter that their father may not have the means to buy them a pram or even put their food in a decent Tupperware. The important point to these kids is that here we are with a father who loves us, who's also willing to spend time with us. We spend a lot of time marching, demanding that there must be an end to gender-based violence and mobilizing other men so that we speak with an amplified voice in society against gender-based violence. We have developed lots of tools which you can see on our website, including these digital stories that I've referred to. The pictures that I'm going to show as I conclude, Chairperson, is a pictures of the work that we do in prisons, in the sections of men that have been through sexual offenses. Because we think it's not enough to simply lock men away. We also need to transform their thinking around their relationship with women. So we take them through a workshop on gender awareness, on the importance of treating women with respect and dignity, and then they develop these murals where they themselves are developing the messages, as you can see in these pictures here. And they, in that picture, they are showing that they came in because of violence, because they were taking drugs, because they were ignorant. But they are living after this workshop knowing that they must respect women, knowing that no means no, knowing that they must live positive lives, knowing that they must act as positive fathers, accepting that they have done wrong to society and that they must live honestly. And they live, therefore, with a certificate which they want to say to the community, here we are, we've paid our debt to you, but we want to now act differently as responsible men who have learned from our unfortunate past. And these are some of the messages, as I've indicated. This is one of the prisons that we worked with in the Western Cape. And I want to conclude with this message, which was shared by one of the men who said, my heart was scarred by anger and pain of this violence. And there was nothing to gain from this. My body is marked with bruises and cuts. What makes a man? Not violence or guts. Sentenced to serve in this box of men, I break free to feel new feelings that are in me. That to be a man is not to be violent. To be a man is to be there and be supportive and be respectful. I thank you, Chairperson.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kumalo. What makes a man? It is true, to be a man, it doesn't mean to be violent. Each one of us has a role to play in building a responsible and caring man. Let's all go out. Let's reach out, everyone, in fighting this pandemic. Thank you very much. We are now going to the second session. Khaindira ndova ndisachimbili ni note. Ndikochimbila na vamwe. Kuna van'wani lava na vona va fanele ku teka nkarhi lowu.
Other people who must take this opportunity and push the program. They will take
ku vaaki kumbe tiko ra hina ra South Africa ri kuma leswi hi navelaka ku avelana xikan'we na vona.
Understand what they want to share with them.
Ni lava ku ya vitana mutshami wa xitulu.
I want to take this opportunity and invite the
and petitions. Vona Honorable Ntita leswaku va yisa emahlweni ntirho lowu hi nga wu sungula. Inkomu tintambu hi teto.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to the Deputy Chair of the NCOP, yourself, Chair of the caucus, the Chief Whip of the NCOP, our esteemed guests, without naming them, ladies and gentlemen. I must say I am more informed than I was. It is true that from time to time, we need to have these kind of interactions. And thank you very much to Honorable Deputy Chair, as well as the Chairperson of the caucus, for inviting Ms. Njima Gugu, no Sistumi Disimelo, Kwakunye, Notatu Bafana, who just spoke on behalf of men. The information that they gave us, I'm happy that they were able to have pointers as to what exactly we should be doing. Issues of systems came up very strong. Places of safety came up very strong. Prioritizing the victim rather than the perpetrator was one of the key issues that was highlighted. Going to the last presentation, we must embrace the work that is being done by men, especially those who believe that gender-based violence is not accepted. And I have taken notes of issues that you have highlighted that we need as legislators to look at. I felt before I give over for the interaction, I must just make those few remarks that get to appreciate these presentations and assure the presenters that this is not a talk show. We want to make change. For us to make change, we must be able to know exactly where we should make a change. Then, with that, can I please ask for our honorable participants to please mute? And now I will allow the interaction from the presentations that have been made. I am looking at the hands so far. I do not see any. I'm looking at the hand. There's one.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can we allow her, Unongaba Masungu, to speak?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. To the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP and the Chairperson of Council of Services. And also, let me say, protocol observed. Thank you very much for this wonderful topic, but very, very much emotive. I just want to weigh in on what Reverend Bafana Kumalo has already alluded to in relation to the strategies on how to deal with this demonic gender-based violence. There is a part or a community that we normally forget. He alluded to the fact that we need to involve our communities at street level. And I want to say there are those houses that are headed by children. And you find that the parents passed away and those children become vulnerable, both boys and girls. And I want to invite all of us to say, as communities, let us take care of each other, because as we speak right now, we have a case here in Deep Kloof Zone 3. I think everybody has heard about that case, whereby a mother of a 17-year-old mother with 3 kids, and right now she is pregnant. And the first child was 3 years old, the second one is 2 years old. So you can imagine how old was that girl got pregnant. Obviously, she was a minor. And what has happened right now, the boyfriend to this young girl, 17-year-old, raped a 3-year-old child, assaulted the child, wampula imbambo, and the brain. And the child died at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. We are on that case right now as we speak. So when you ask the neighbors are saying, ever since the parents in that house, there was a little bit of family disorganization. It's only now that the community members are coming in to say, this is what has been happening. Meaning each and every girl child, and I mean it, I'm from there. I'm still going to go there. Each and every girl child in that house has been raped, including the 3-year-old. And all of them are saying that, are mentioning the same thing, to say, there is nothing we can do. We try to speak to the social workers. We try to speak to the pastors. We try to speak to everyone, but we cannot get help. So my plea to all of us is, let's take care of those child-headed families where there are orphans in the main, because that is the case with this house as Zone 3 Deep Kloof. I thank you, Bazari.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have another hand? I'm handicapped here. I cannot see the hands.
There is no one that is raising their hands And
Thank
if there
you.
is no one that want to say something, will you allow me, Chairperson, to just speak on one or two issues?
Yes, Deputy, you are allowed.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. As you know, we have been busy throughout the year with the review of the charter, and we came up across all these sad stories in our programs. That is really sad stories, and I'm speaking about stories of people that doesn't even have the capacity to access the services, or to access the or to be treated fairly and equally in society. And that is the reason why I want to just say something is that I think it's Dr. Tumi that spoke about the issue of the capacitation of those that are supposed to serve our communities. I raised this very issue, or it was raised, in a multi-party women's caucus, where we had the justice and the police making presentations on all the wonderful services that are available. And the issue that is bothering me, particularly as a person, is how do we make sure that all our people get access to the services? Because if you look at the story of Dr. Tumi, it is someone that is capacity. She's educated, but she also become a survivor of abuse. So that is why I think, let me speak about this thing. It's making our task and our responsibility so much bigger and greater, to make sure that we address the issues of our communities in all the different areas. And that brings me to, I was invited about 3 months ago by the local community radio to speak about the issue of the role of the bystander. And when I started to read a little bit about what can I say about this topic, I realized there is one specific issue that I want to say, that I realize that in all these things, it is us women as the victims that are in the forefront of addressing the very same scourge that we are the victims of. We are too much in the forefront. And I'm very glad, or in fact, I like the fact that we have partners like Reverend Kumalo, and also like the main sector that want to assist us with this scourge. But I can tell you now, if the men of South Africa doesn't really start to be at the forefront of making sure that this scourge is being tackled, we will never see an end or eradication of this specific issue. That it's so painful. It's not only gender-based violence and femicide. Remember, we had the Law Reform Conference, where the issue of customary marriages and the rights of particularly the woman as wives, that can be in all cultures, not only, we usually took that in African culture, this thing is happening, that the man can leave his wife and take another wife and not even see to it that he look after. But it's happening in all across the spectrum, that men can walk out of his traditional house of his first wife and get another wife and not even look back, and that woman doesn't know their rights. In all the work that we are doing today, the honorable delegate that spoke before me spoke about child-aided households and what is happening in the child. It is a massive task and a massive responsibility. And I just feel that at one stage or another, we will have to coordinate the action within the system. But we will have to coordinate the action. But I want to say that personally, I feel that it is time that all the men of South Africa stand up and say, not in my name, it seems as if they are not loud enough. It seems as if they are not loud enough. But also those of us that are sitting at your home, knowing that something wrong is happening next door, and say, it's not my business. It cannot be not my business anymore. It's everybody's business. And particularly, I want to speak about those that are being bystanders. And I also want to express appreciation to Dr. Tumi on one issue. And it is the issue of showing us how you must really approach the healing side of the abuse. And also, I mean, when the first speaker spoke, she spoke about the failure of the system, how the system is failing the survivors and the victims. Because some of us are victims, some of us are survivors. Because those that with a victim mentality will forever remain in that situation. But those that are survivors can walk out of the situation and become and transcend. I like the word of transcend to your own healing. So I just thought when I was thinking so much, and we are really trying. Honorable Chairperson, you know that we are really trying to empower the women of South Africa, but we need the assistance and the help of each and every person that they've got an interest to make sure. Today, I get so excited when I see the women of the Progressive Women's Movement also on our platform. They've been with us throughout. All of the formal institutions and also those in communities. If we really, I'm getting very worried. If we can see that the more we are trying, the more people are spitting in our faces. Because this one of the 5 children and the mother, the other day when we started the men's parliament, this woman was coming out of a workplace in the morning after she worked night shift, a mother of 2 young women of 31 years. She was robbed and killed right in front of the workplace where she went out to go and try to provide for her own children. So South Africa, with the violence against women and children, it is really a low intensity war that we are seeing in this country. And we really want to call on men in South Africa, be at the forefront of this struggle and assist us as women, because really we are victims. We are really victims, not only us as women, but all the vulnerable groups. And I want, the issue is that don't be a bystander. Act and get involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. Still looking for the hands. No hands. I would then ask Usis Tumi.
Honorable Baha.
Oh, Honorable Baha. Thank you. Honorable Baha, it's your turn.
Of the session, let me thank you for giving me an opportunity. Firstly, let me say that probably I joined this session by default. Because when I looked around, I thought that it was an NCOP session. But then I saw that there's 4 or 5 of us and I wanted to run away. However, I then thought that no, maybe let me listen to what is being brought forward. And also being a member of parliament that serves in the different committees. Committees that, deal with all these particular issues. I think that for me, this would have been important if we could have a session wherein we are able to share these experiences with both men and women, so that it does not become a session for a few people only. Because I think it brings a different light to the whole
issue of gender-based violence. Secondly, there have been stories that are on the news about different bad things that are happening. Women being killed, children being killed, and it doesn't end. It continues. And so it would be important at some point for us to be able to listen across the board about these experiences, so that it's not men doing their own thing and women doing their own. At some point, it becomes a coordinated effort, a call that we make all of us, so that we speak knowing pretty well what the story is about, knowing what this person went through because of me as a man, and what it is that I can do to make sure that we get rid or make sure that these issues don't happen again. Now, as a first attendant of such sessions, I think that I won't miss any other, Chairperson, because I think that it opens me up to various issues. There are things that I normally do at home as a married man and as a father. And it's things that, some of these things, I just saw my dad doing this when he was still alive. And I would not like it. I would stand with my mother on this one. And it was just something that was in my mind, not really knowing that it happens religiously in some homes. So I'm saying that this would kind of open our minds as men to quite a lot of things that are happening that are not supposed to. Now, I think that the presentations that were made kind of opened my mind, and I'm starting to think about a whole lot of different things. For instance, I would not be sitting and thinking that someone who is as qualified as a doctor would go through this and this, because I think that this person is more opened up,
enlightened,
knows, has the power, has been empowered, and all those things. But it happens. And I can tell you, Chairperson, it doesn't only happen once, it happens to many, many people. But people are just keeping quiet about it, hoping that it will go away, or hoping that they will kind of, you'll wake up and it will be gone. But I'm saying, Chairperson, probably at some point to the Deputy Chair of the NCOP as well, maybe we must have a session wherein we have men who are members of parliament sitting with the mothers and the female counterparts in parliament, have presentations like we've just had today, wherein we are able to interact with these issues. Because I can say, Chairperson, some of us are doing all these wrong things unknowingly. We don't know that what we are doing is this bad. We don't know what we are doing is this wrong. I'm doing what my father used to do. And yet it kind of dents the credibility. It kills off the power of my wife. It kind of makes the person feel that I can't do anything without my husband, which is not the case. So I'm saying, Chairperson, I didn't want to speak, but I thought, no, let me say something to kind of say that I am here and I listened. I thought I would slip out of this session at some point, but I'm still here as we speak because I thought that it's something that is worth listening to, that is worth taking up. And I think that I can safely say that I'm here and I would want to play my part in ensuring that I assist wherever I can, Deputy Chairperson, that I can be roped in wherever a need is, so that I can play my part and make sure that I'm part of building a better South Africa and build a better father and build a better man for the entire nation of South Africa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Viva. There is still Fundi and Zimande. There is still Fundi and Zimande. Thank you. Viva, Honorable
Fundi, your turn.
Fundi and Zimande.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all the honorable members of parliament. Good afternoon to all our panelists. Thank you very much for your inputs. I just wanted to make a few comments. You know, I have a lot to say about GBV, but I'll limit myself today. I think perhaps to echo Honorable Baha, I will say is very correct that we need ongoing education programs on the issue of GBV because it's so inbred in us, the culture of violence, because it's not just men who are violent, we are just violent people as a country because of the histories, and I won't go into those. But I also want to say, on the question of having mixed groups discussing GBV, we must be very cautious when we have those particular mixed groups, because from my experience of working on these issues, I once had a very, very chaotic forum where we were discussing, it was around this time, 16 Days of Activism, where we were discussing GBV in a community in Mpumalanga, whilst I was serving as a commissioner in the CGE. And I found that men were very disruptive and ridiculing everything that was being discussed there. But as soon as I said to them, you know, comrades, that women are really, really scared of South African men. The risk of this is that women are not going to be having relationships with men, and we are not going to be reproducing people in this country. That's the time they started to become serious about the discussion on that particular day. So I know that it may be important to have mixed groups, but we must continue also with the separate groups, because there are things that as women we want to discuss on our own. And I'm sure that as men, there's probably things that they would want to discuss on their own. And I think that our culture, really, there must be a way in which we revive the Ubuntu part of our culture, because I think that's the one thing about our culture that is really good in terms of its values, in terms of what it was seeking to do. Because in that Ubuntu practice, we knew that you could not be alone with the problem. We were there with you to help with the problem. The other thing is this ongoing education must incorporate SABC. SABC must play a role. I'm one of those people who believe that SABC must be salvaged and saved, but I believe that SABC must play a meaningful role for our country in terms of programs of mass education about our constitutional values, about human rights. That is very, very important. I know that in Cuba, for example, they do a lot of mass education, and I think that is why they don't have the problems that we have to the same level, let me say. And I believe that we should not talk about GBV as one other issue that we must discuss. We must talk about GBV in the context of the transformation of our society. Because once we don't go deep in ensuring that our society is transformed so that every one of us feels at home in South Africa, every one of us feels safe in South Africa, no matter where they are, no matter what the time is, we will continue to have issues of GBV. So we did not, I think as a democratic dispensation, we did make a mistake of not ensuring that the values of the Constitution are popularized. People understand why we are choosing this particular route as a country to have a human rights-based constitution. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you very much for the input. But what I would like to know now from Ukoko, from Usistomi, one is the issue of the book.
Can we first finalize those that still want to speak?
Oh, okay. I can
we've
see
got
them.
Sylvia Mdaka and Honorable
Oh,
Gillian.
yes.
And Honorable Gillian.
Or Honorable Gillian.
And Mdaka, Sylvia.
Yes, yes. Honorable Gillian, it's your turn.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thank you for this opportunity. I think, first of all, I want to welcome the inputs by the previous speakers. Chairperson, the issue of gender-based violence and femicide and the issue of the 16 days of activism, I think, is one of the critical programs that we are embarking upon. And I want to allude on the Deputy Chairperson by saying, for us in Parliament, it's not only about the 16 days of activism, but I think we have mastered this, this advocacy that 16 days of activism is not enough, and we have embarked on a lot of programs in Parliament. One of the programs that I think, Chairperson, that we must embark on in our communities is a program to work together with the faith-based organizations on ground level, and also to come up within our communities on the young men's dialogue. Because we can do a lot of advocacy and we can do a lot of programs, but if we don't change the mindset of our young boy child, it will be a fight in vain. I was very privileged last week to have the Deputy Chairperson, within my constituency, and I want to thank her that she did that, where we had a faith-based seminar. One of the issues that stand out in that seminar, Chairperson, was when the family members of victims spoke. And I think that's one of the issues that we need to highlight to families, is to really take notice of the behavioral change of your children. And I want to thank the the presenters or the speakers of today, because I really appreciate that inputs. But I think, like Member Baga said, it's not a fight for women alone. It's not a fight for men alone, but it is a societal fight. And we must really take this fight down to ground level, within our communities, within our churches, within our mosque, within traditional leaders. And I think if we can have that agreement, and if we can reach that social compact, the fight will be much easier. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mdaka.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nita. I'm Sylvia Mdaka from PWMSA. From PWMSA, we have noticed the following. In order for us as women to be free, especially when Google was talking about the social economic review, we need to change the PFMA. The PFMA need to be changed so that at the end of the day, women, particularly for us as Black women, so that we must be free. And the exploitation through patriarchy will end, because we will be well armed ourselves as women. And there is another thing that we also noticed, that when you're a woman, especially, you find that the man has murdered your children and you become a survivor. You are always a victim to the in-laws. We had them here in Limpopo. We had a woman, we remember it was in 2015, where a man has just killed 4 children. And I think you know that it is always done up to today. That women, we tried as women to support that woman and even build another house for that woman. What pained us is that at the end of the day, the house was destroyed.
When we tried to find out who destroyed it, nobody wanted to tell us. We even furnished the house. But at the end of the day, that woman fought to be a victim, and she was told that because you imprisoned our child. At the end of the day, you ask yourself, this is the woman who fell pregnant 4 times. She went to labor, for heaven's sake. And now, how can she be free and be happy if the children are being slaughtered? Just slaughtered like that. We can't go on like that. So we must have a support also for dysfunctional families. A lot has been said, especially by different speakers, to say, let us look at the child-headed families and the women that are left alone. Remember, in our culture, it must end. We are always taken to court to say that when a man passed on, this man has left you for about 10, 12, 15 years. At the end of the day, when he died, you are forced as a woman to be on the mattress to cry for that man that you don't even know the face anymore. Then what is this? The system must really favor us. We are tired of this thing that we are always being shamed as women when we act upon the abuses that we are having. I can't say a lot, and thanks to Google and thanks to Dr. Kitumeti, the deputy chairperson of NCOP, have said a lot that comes from the heart to say that what do we do? Because here we know, as you are strong as a woman, you are associated with the pain. And it also comes to the society. Do you know that if you're a woman, immediately when you call yourself with a double barrel surname, immediately when you tell a person to write it down, they become furious. If I say I'm Sylvia Mapala, I'm dark, everybody will say, no, why? Why are you doing? No, we mustn't do that. Most of the people, because we realize that as women, why do we use that? Because our children don't even know where we come from. So please, with GBV, we must.
We have lost you. We have lost you. Thank you very much.
About femicide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Yes, there are no hands now. I am sure I finally find my way of seeing them. Thank you very much. I had this one question for Usis Tumi. First is the issue of the book. How do we access your book? Because we'd like to have one and also inform other colleagues that there is this kind of a book after listening to what happened to you. The other one, to both of you, have you ever thought of having a support group, maybe where you are staying or else centrally somewhere, so that out of your experience first, Sistomi, you are able to talk to those that are still experiencing gender-based violence? On the side of Usis Koko, this information that you have given us, how I wish it should be shared to a larger platform. Not that I undermine where we are. As a result, I was going to ask the deputy chair if is it possible in our council, as we are saying, the issue of gender-based violence is 165 days. Maybe when we have these departments that are relevant to issues of gender-based violence, we have a person that put into context the work that they are doing and the issues of gender-based violence and transformation. So that would be my questions to you, and also the request from the deputy chair. Can I give over to our presenters?
Okay. Dumi, would you like to go first, or should I just, can I humbly request to speak first, because I think there's a hailstorm coming here.
Okay, okay.
But firstly, Firstly, I want to say to Dr. Disemelo, you said that you don't know what your purpose is. Please eradicate that out of your vocabulary. The fact that you are actually, here and speaking to us, for me, just says this is your purpose. You're healing a lot of people with your story.
I thought
and
I didn't
I
have
really think,
Hey, there's someone who's disturbing us. Can you please mute if you are not speaking? Sorry.
Okay. Can you hear me now, Chairperson?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I wanted to say to Dr. Disemelo that she must never say she doesn't know what her purpose is, because with what she just shared today, she's healing a lot of women. Her story is actually the reason why today she's got this beautiful purpose. And I think there's so much that she can do just through her experience and what she has had to endure. And I commend you. You are a scholar, an academic. It's not easy for a lot of women to get to where you are, and congratulations for that. Secondly, just on the issue of the book, we will definitely share information. It's a fiction book. Mine is available in bookstores nationwide, but I would definitely love to send courtesy copies for Christmas. It is about 5 women and all the things that they go through. It's actually all the experiences. So patriarchy, culture, the impositions of certain things in culture, that you should be married at a certain age, and a number of things, including gender-based violence as well. I actually appreciate your question in terms of what are we doing in terms of, creating awareness or even groups. Personally, I don't have a specific platform, but I'm a writer as well. I also write in publications such as the Mail and Guardian, Sowetan. So I use the pen to express my views, but I really appreciate such platforms in order for us to engage. And I think it's quite profound. But just as a last point, Tama, is for myself, is that, for us to eradicate this, the economic trajectory of Black women needs to change. Black women are in survival mode. They accept a lot of things that happen to them because economically they are so disempowered. And I think Parliament is a very instrumental institution in just advancing the economic agenda for a lot of African women who are not getting anything. And I hope as an accountability structure, you will hold government accountable to say how many Black women have benefited from this pandemic, the funds that were given out to businesses, and how many Black female-owned businesses have benefited in this regard. So that's my parting shot.
Thank you very much. The next one.
Thank you for the opportunity. Just to go to the points that you made, Honorable. Okay. For me, I think Google also missed the part that I said, when I was not okay, I didn't have a purpose. I didn't know my purpose. But 2013, when I was okay, and I can't be where I am now if I didn't know my purpose. So 2013, when I healed, it was because I then embraced my purpose. That is why I am healed. And that is why I have a book which also has a conclusion. Remember, I said I wrote the book and it didn't have a conclusion because it was just floating. But when I healed, and then I was able to write the last chapter, which was to motivate using my story, which is a testimony to many women who are struggling with this, or many people actually who are struggling with this. And the book, I did publish it, and I'm selling it myself. There it is. And it's so if anyone is interested in it, they're welcome to contact me via email. I am, they've got, I think, Zandile has my contact details, my email and my telephone number. They're welcome to just send me a WhatsApp, and then I can give you the details. I do courier it, and anywhere in the country, even outside. And in terms of supporting people who are going through this, well, I've got a private practice whereby people who have the resources are able to come and, consult. But I do also assist with talks wherever it is I'm invited on different platforms like today, because we can never just, just count the power of the mouth, just the power of words, the power of talking to people. And I do also aim to refer people to the public sector, whereby they can get assistance, and to the organizations that I work with, like Power, for example, whereby I know they are reliable in terms of assisting women, children who are going through this. So I do assist in terms of referral system, but in terms of a support group, it's usually people who are, who have the resources and are able to come through. But in the public sector, I do assist in terms of referral, because there are systems in place that are working in some areas that at least with my referral letter, I am able to assist in that way. And I do that for free. I don't charge at all for that. I don't know if I think I've covered all the questions.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm based in Pretoria.
Can I then allow the Reverend for the parting shots?
Thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to acknowledge Honorable
Baha.
Sorry, there's noise. Someone trying to move away.
Okay.
I do think that we have started on a good trajectory with this conversation, and hopefully we're going to have more men coming on board in all these efforts that are going to be ensuring that we deal with patriarchy and these toxic masculinities, and we can cultivate positive masculinities and become mentors for younger boys, so that we deal with the challenges of gender-based violence in our country, and that women can live a fulfilled lives without fearing walking out because they will be accosted, and they can be safe in their own homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Deputy Chair, did you want to say something?
No, the last time that we also had someone that addressed us, that was an author of a specific book that was also a survivor of abuse, that was intimate partner abuse. The chief whip actually assisted us to buy a few of the books of the specific presenter, particularly also to express our appreciation for the fact that they were willing to be part and parcel of our program. So I think we will take the same route to make sure that we actually empower some of the MPs, and also particularly the NCOP. We will make sure that we actually link up. And also I saw a request from the PWMSA that they also want to have some of the books in their offices so that they can assist in the sales of the books, because it is very important for those that can have access to that kind of information. Yes. But I also, we take note of those that Honorable Baha feel exactly how the chief felt when we had the first session where we actually brought true stories of people that were survivors of gender-based violence, and we are really grateful for men that want to commit, and we will make sure that even within our, and I will request Honorable Gillian from the side of our committee to arrange something specifically for the men of the NCOP.
Yes.
Because yes. I heard it was a request. When we have these programs, it sometimes happens that MPs do not participate, and so we are really grateful for the fact that Honorable Baha also realized that what we are trying to do is to one person at a time change the mindset of South Africans, and particularly South African men. Because if you can change one person, then you have already achieved a lot, because that one person will be able to influence more people and make a difference. And like what was said, the men of South Africa can assist in building a real national democratic society where everyone feels free to express themselves in any way. And also where we can assist one another to heal, because South Africa is too violent. It needs healing. This country needs healing. So I just want to express appreciation also to the office of the Deputy Chairperson and the project team at Parliament. Whenever we have an idea, the idea will be fulfilled. And really today I am touched by the stories that I've heard here. I am really very much touched, and that is what I actually wanted to say. And thanks for the opportunity, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. Deputy Chair, I'll just highlight the few things that came out of the latter engagement on questions. That one, we should prioritize the child-headed families. I think it's one point that we need to highlight. And as well, in the presentation of Ms. Ndima, the issue of the causes. I'm not sure whether it was Ms. Ndima or as Usis Tumi, the causes of the gender-based violence. We need to focus on those so that we're able to come up with a lasting solution. And we have to be patient with the victims, because we sometimes really, she's correct, feels, why is this person not getting out of this mess? But we do not know. Now we know that patience does pay some kind of dividends. So I felt I must raise those things. And again, the issue of men. It's true that we really need to have a session that deals with men only in the NCOP, because majority of us as women in the NCOP, we participate in these sessions, but they don't. Yet we want them to be part of what we are doing. So I felt I must highlight those critical things. On the issue of Eastern Cape, it is true, Chair, the victim was apprehended by the police in the Eastern Cape. He was hiding in King Williamstown after he has done that in one of the townships around King Williamstown. So we hope that, come again?
You said you wanted to say the perpetrator.
Yes, the perpetrator, sorry, the perpetrator. Yes, it was apprehended. So we're happy about the swift action about the men and women in blue in Eastern Cape. On that note, let me thank everyone. And I must say thanks to you first, Deputy Chair, for continuing to facilitate this kind of sessions. They are helping. At the end of the day, we'll get somewhere. To our presenters, we really value your time that you put on this, the research sometimes that you make in your own time to contribute to this very bad things that we find ourselves in South Africa of the gender-based violence and femicide. And also to the participants, thank you for continuing to participate in this. I dibonile Mamum Daka from the Progressive Women's Movement, and as well the participation of everyone who was on this. Miss Nzimande, we saw her and
the viewers at home. Don't forget the viewers. Don't forget the viewers at home. People are really watching.
Yes, I will. I'm still going there. And obviously, Monday is a valuable contribution that when we deal with gender-based violence, we must also touch on the issue of the transformation. To the viewers at home, I hope that we are all learning from what we have heard today, and we are going to continue to learn and share with each other so that we take each other by hand to take us out of this quagmire. We thank your time for listening to us, for interacting in your own way. We hope that we will spread the gospel. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable
Thank
Minister.
you. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mama.
Bye-bye, Mamita.
Thank you, Honorable Baha. We appreciate you. How sees violence? Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Darling, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairperson of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus.
Yes, yes.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work.
Sure.
Oh, shame. Sorry.
That was excellent.
I'm used to this.
Thank you, Kevin, for your patience.
Oh.
Thank you, Dr. Tumi. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Mama.
Bye. Bye, Maleka, my dear. Oh, my Wela Kasi.